ვიცი რომ დიბისი დაიბადა ავსტრალიაში, მე კარგ ხანს ცხოვრობდა ლათინურ ამერიკაში, ახლა ცხოვრობს ინგლისში, ირლანდიაში, ამერიკაშიც აქვს გონი ნაცხოვრები. მაინტერესებს სად გრძნობს თავს ყველაზე კარგად და რატომ მოგზაურობს ამდენს.
I grew up traveling. And so I got used to it. You discover something if you ever live in more than one place, your soul automatically gets split. And it's probably, I don't think it's a good idea. It's not the most confident thing to live in different places because you're a different person in each place, and each language makes you a different person and makes your brain different. But once you've done it once, then it doesn't matter where you go anymore, because wherever you are, you always still wish you were somewhere else. So I don't know, it's just the way I am. I'm liking it here though. I could stay here.
Wow. Thank you. So where were you and მინდა ვკითხო სად იყო როცა დაიწყო მუშაობა ვერნონგენიოს ლითლზე და როგორ მიხვდა რომ უნდა ამ წიგნის დაწერა და საიდან გაჩნდა პირველი იდეა?
I started writing that after seeing a picture on television of an American kid being put into a police car who had obviously taken a gun to school and shot a bunch of children. And I think it was before Columbine, but the way the media treated it, I just saw the image. I was passing by a television and I just saw the image there. And it was a typical American image with 50 police cars, and you could tell it was a big deal. And this 12, 13-year-old boy was there, and it just became a. It became a focus for a lot of frustration and anger I had at the time against my culture, which is the English-speaking culture, which is the next, I believe, is the next big problem the world has to face. And it just, I wrote one page. I hadn't really written like this before, but I wrote one page in the voice of that kid I saw on television. And I just vented my anger. And I liked the page enough that I continued until I wrote 300 pages of it.
Wow. მე ინტერესებს როგორ მუშაობს ზოგადად წიგნზე და წლების განმავლობაში შეიცვალა თუ არა ეს მუშაობის სტილი?
I'm trying to
Maybe we should just talk in English, and if someone needs
No, your translator is very, very good.
Yeah.
I wish she was upstairs with us having a glass of wine instead of stuck downstairs, even as I speak this. Translating it. My style, you mean in my practice of writing?
Yep.
I'm hopeless. I write by night and I edit during the day. I'm trying to change, is the answer to the question. I'm trying to change. I believe it needs discipline, and just to say at a certain hour every day or a certain number of days, I sit from 4 till 7 and write a certain amount and then stop. But I find it impossible, and in fact I don't believe the writers who say that. You hear, especially commercial writers, say, okay, I get up at 7, write 1,000 words, have a cup of tea, write another 1,000 words. I walk for 1 hour and 40 minutes, then I write 1,000 words, then it's bullshit. The problem with a novel is that once it's going, once you've begun, you really live there, and your brain is there the whole time, and everything you see around you relates to the novel, and so you're not present in reality anymore, which makes it impossible to leave the page. So I always feel anxious if I get up and leave the book, because it's like taking a camera. If you take a camera on holiday, nothing happens. If you don't take the camera, suddenly everything is photogenic and incredible. It's like that. As soon as you get up from the screen, then all your good ideas come and you get preoccupied. And then when you sit down, your mind goes blank. So, you know, dealing with that, I have heard that many great authors have trained themselves to go at a certain time every day and sit for usually no more than 3 hours. And they swear that the work comes in those hours, and then it works. And I believe that's probably true, but I haven't done it yet.
Wow. Are you in any way involved in the publishing process? Are you interested in the cover of the book or deadlines, or where is it going, or how?
No, I like looking at the covers. I design a cover even before I write the book. Often I will design a cover just because then I know I have to put a book behind it. But they've never used them.
Why?
Because the publisher, you also have to let them feel involved, and they come up with good ideas. It's a very interesting thing about the work, but when the writing is finished, then it no longer belongs to me. And there's a very strange sense, like talking to you here today, there's a very strange sense of ridicule in a way, because it doesn't feel like my work. It feels like a book I read, just the same as you read it, and now I'm sitting here telling you, but you've also read it. And so once you finish the book, it really does have its own legs, and it walks away. Publishing, it depends entirely on the people involved. So I'm very interested with my Georgian publishers, because they get me incredibly drunk and completely waste the whole next day while I eat food and try and recover. But it just depends on the people involved. It is kind of interesting, but at the same time not, you know. It's very lucky for me if I get to come and meet new people and see somewhere new. But that doesn't often happen, that you get to go to the places you want to go. Very often, I mean, if the book is published in many places, I haven't been to probably 15 or 20% of the places the book is published, and I never will, because they buy the book off a list and it goes, and that's it, you know. Sometimes you hear from the translator, and sometimes not. But this is interesting. Now you see, this is more like when I was writing it, because I couldn't write the book with all of you in the room, because I would be too self-conscious. But now that it's written, I'm very glad to sit in the room with you. And now you're self-conscious, so we're all in it together.
What do you think you have a specific genre that you work in? Where do you think your books belong on the bookshelves, in the bookstores, on the shelves? Under which genre or section?
I don't know. I don't know enough about it.
No, okay.
I'm not studied. See, you guys, you're more educated than me. If all of you here are at university, if this is your first day at university, you're already more educated than me. So you know more. And there's a problem. You know, it's too late for me to get a degree in literature or to read every book. And so I just have to go with my ideas and not worry about it too much, you know.
Have you done a lot of public readings? Do you enjoy them?
Here in Georgia?
No.
Or anywhere?
Yeah, anywhere.
I've done plenty enough. I don't rush to do them. I mean, it's very strange. With writing is a solitary thing, and it can be strange to read from a book. But again, it's about the opportunity to actually meet someone. We have something in common. We have an adventure in common because we both read the same book, and obviously some of us liked it together. So that's what's special about it. But I find it very strange to read from a book in public.
Have you ever read the book that was not published yet, that you were working on, and you just tested it or something?
I think I have once, yeah. I didn't read a part that was a test, though. I read a part that was definite, like the first page or something, but I have read from unpublished work, yeah.
Okay. კითხვები ხო არ გაქვთ, შეგვიძლია?
No, never is a question until the first one. Hi.
As we've been told, you live in Ireland, right? Why do you live in Ireland? Because I know that some modern writers also lived, spent their time there, and you get like special inspiration there, or there are just low taxes, or you like beer, or why Ireland?
Okay, it's I got a publishing deal, my first publishing deal ever, 45 minutes before the New York tragedy of 9/11 for this book. And so within 45 minutes of getting a book deal, it was the first money and the first freedom I had had for years and years and years. Suddenly on that same day, it looked like I was living in London at the time, and suddenly it looked like the world was going to go up in smoke, and London was going to be a target because our Prime Minister was making all the wrong noises. And I thought, you know what, I got to get out of it. I need some space. And that same time, I'll tell you a funny story as well. I bought my first car in years. I bought an old Jeep. And the day after I bought it, I left it in front of the house. And the day after I bought it, I woke up and it was gone. And I phoned the police. And they said, well, have you tried phoning the council? Maybe they towed it away. And I said, well, why would they tow it away? This is just a street, there's no restricted parking. But when I went downstairs, it turned out that overnight, someone had come and painted restricted parking lines on the road. And I phoned the council, and it turned out that they had towed the car away on the day one, and that you now had to pay money and buy a license to park your car in front of your house. This is a very British thing. This is why I love it here. Here you can park on someone's head, and it's fine. And so I went to, and of course, because it's England as well, they didn't use officials to tow your car away. They hired like the mafia. They hired like this foreign mafia, had taken my car, and I had to go and find it. None of them spoke English at this place in London. I had to pay them something like £180, a shitload of money, to get this car back. And that happened on the same day, and it was like, the 12th of September. Like the world was just too much. And I said, you know what, I am getting out. And first of all, Ireland is close by, but it's a neutral country. It has no offensive forces. And so it has no enemies in the world. And I thought, that sounds great. And it's much cheaper than England to find a piece of countryside. So I went and got a very remote piece of countryside. And I left from that rage. But to finish the story, my specific intention, and this is why I ended up in a very remote mountainside in Ireland, my specific intention was to go to the most remote, completely empty landscape I could find with that Jeep. Park the Jeep on an empty road, walk 5 kilometers away with a camera, take a picture of the entire panorama with my Jeep in the distance in the middle of the road, and send that picture to the council in London and say, come and get it now, you fuckers. So, which is to say, I had rage. I had modern rage, and I just said, nah, that's enough bullshit,
So when you create that kind of characters, how much you rely on existing stereotypes, how much you manipulate with those stereotypes, how much you rely on your personal experience, on your personal acquaintances, and besides this, how much you use the existing narrating techniques. I have a feeling that you use them a lot, but what is the specific way of transforming those narrative techniques in your books? Do you have developed your own personal specific way of using narrative techniques?
I can probably answer it all in one.
Okay.
It's a good question. I think the aim, or my feeling, behind all of my books is to... I use stereotypes and I use recognized techniques to make fun. So I like the allegory. I like to be allegorical. So, for instance, in Vernon Little, he thought of his life as a bad TV movie, and he was permanently waiting for a happy ending, because we all know the movie has to end happy if it comes from the USA. And that's why the book has a happy ending. Even though in my first draft, he dies at the end, which is what would naturally happen. But I got to there and thought, no, it's not absurd enough. And so I like making fun. I like making fun of the way we perceive things, but it's also quite bitter. So I use those things as it's in the way a lover will sarcastically answer back to you, So this is the way you like to do things, and now look what happened. Is kind of what I like to do with the books. And so in terms of Ludmila's Broken English, I had the character that was based on a region I was familiar with, just over the border from Georgia, actually. So I had the taste of it and the smell of it. And I have to say that the anything grotesque or violent in Ludmila is actually nothing compared to the reality of this particular place, which is a refugee area of really shocking inhumanity. But then on top of that, of course, it's all about the way we're sitting in London. The whole fucking history of the Middle East and much of the Far East is about some bureaucrat sitting at a desk in London or in Paris, drawing borders and having ideas about what the rest of the world should do. And if you look at all the conflicts of the last century, they are about territories and political borders, and it's because the political border of a country has cut cultures in half, or it's included cultures that hate each other, or, there are very clearly natural borders here. And I'm talking about, your Kurdistan and your various very complex and interconnected places where a bureaucrat in London has superimposed a line because it suited them back in, like Iraq, for instance, is completely manufactured in England as a political state. And it was because they didn't have the budget after the First World War, it was like 4 or 5 bureaucrats they sent from London to invent that country politically. And it never worked because it's got nothing to do with the people who live there. And that has been a problem for a century, and people suddenly think, they watch the news now, and they think, oh, Iraq, you know, it never existed. We invented it. And now we're bombing it because it's not conforming to our dream of what it should be. And it's a really, really dangerous, horrible Anglo thing that we have, and which now America has, of saying, here's what the world should do, you know, here's what we want them to do. And if you don't do it, they come and kill your citizens. And so anyway, all of this is in the, you know, the symbolism, and it's the way we use the same stereotypes and narratives. It's the way the BBC even, you know, will just say, you know, we'll just use a buzzword, and we know immediately it's a Muslim, or it's a, you know, we're dealing with shorthand for actually very complex issues that we don't understand, which is dangerous. And, you know, recent history has had the same thing of cultures suddenly feeling powerful enough to control other regions and other cultural groups, and it doesn't work out. So all of that, the stereotypes, I love them in books because it's how we think, and it's so ignorant and stupid. But hopefully one day, I don't know, they're also a lot of fun. You know, and Vernon is full of those same symbols. You know, you have the fat person and this one, and then that's like The Simpsons. You have your well-defined characters in there. And then in amongst it, I wanted to put a real boy saying, what the fuck is this? I have to find a solution to all these stereotypes. And likewise in Ludmila, she was the only one that survived, actually, in a true sense, for being the you know, the strong one, the anti-heroine. So I hope that answers your question. It's certainly taken me long enough, but that's because I hadn't thought about it before. Thank you.
Do you have, maybe after Vernon, do you have a special favorite character in your books? And I have the second question. There was a play in 2007 of Vernon Got Little, and have you seen it? Or is there any other place you have seen it?
Right, first question, the favorite character in my own books?
Yeah. And why? Sorry.
Well, the ones I like are the ones that I would like in real life, I guess. For me, I liked Pam. I liked Vernon's aunt. Her name was Pam, no? In English, anyway. I liked Vernon's aunt, who didn't give a shit. The one who was always bringing junk food around to the house and was just loud, and I like that. I'm cursed, and it's probably because I'm cursed with enough sensitivity to actually be quite disturbed by the world around me, and to be a little bit afraid of, you know, of who we are. Someone like Pam I always admired because they don't give a shit. And they just go, we're doing it. And they do it and they don't think too much, you know. And it's a curse once you start thinking. It was Vernon's problem exactly. Once you start thinking, you're fucked, because you can't act with the full confidence of luck anymore. And as soon as you start analyzing situations, you're dead, because everything is too absurd. You just have to act automatically. And yet that is the problem, and that's why things are absurd. So, you know, if any of you feel like an underdog, it probably can be that because we're living in an automatic world, but we're the ones who stop and think about it and go, well, that's ridiculous. So anyway, Pam is the character I like for that, because she doesn't think, and she doesn't want to hurt anyone. She's just doing her own thing. Secondly, I did go to the play. It was a lot of fun. I think there was one in Holland. I've been to about 3 or 4 different productions of Vernon. And there was a Dutch one that was really cool. The one in London was a lot of fun. And It's trickier in theatre. They did a damn good job, but it's trickier to get the darkness and to get all these meanings through. But they used music, and all of the good productions used live music, and they sang songs, so they were kind of like musicals. And the music touched you. They used it just at the right moment, and the music touched you in a way that the writing or the acting couldn't. So they worked out really well. They were fun. But I had nothing to do with them. So I just went to see it.
Well, considering the language of your fiction, what do you think about the huge doses of political correctness these days?
Yeah. Forget it. And that's why I love Georgia. I was sitting, it's just so beautiful. Don't lose it. Do not lose it. I'll tell you a story from, a true story from Australia, or a couple, just quickly so that you see what we're dealing with here. From the country of my birth, Australia. I still have family there, I have relatives, and a cousin of mine was in government for a while there. And when I last saw him, he told me, we had the same conversation, and I said, political correctness, because Australia leads the world in political correctness. And he was saying, oh man, it's gotten so much worse since you were here. And he told the story of a guy, they sent a workman, had to come and fix something in the floor of an official building. And so the workman turned up, but he had to set up a special cage area so that people didn't fall into the work. And he had to put a special tape around it that said, danger, danger, do not enter this space. And he set that up, etc. But as soon as that was set up, the building managers weren't allowed to let him in to do the work because it said, do not enter. And so the work couldn't be done because he set up the tape. And it was dangerous, so it was too dangerous. So and you go, it's incredible. He told me another one that in a university there, because of the question of child abuse, has become very, very sensitive, and correctly so. I'm not speaking against that as an issue, but a certain gifted, as sometimes happens that you get, and some of you could be here already, you get a gifted 16 or 17-year-old who gets into university a year early because they're incredibly smart. They had one got into the university there at 17, but before he could enter the university, they had to do a police check on all the other students individually and get them police checked for their background, because technically the 17-year-old is a child. And you cannot work with children or be with children unless you've had a police check in your background for like abuse. And so they had to police check all the students for the young one to come in, because he was a year younger, and that constituted technically a minor thing. So, you know, and it's happening in Britain and etc. Fuck that. If ever I saw a way to waste human endeavor and also to dull and blunt human consciousness, that is the way. And so what we're doing is turning these countries into very soft and stupid places and very entitled little places. I had this conversation just here, walking down the street here. I mean, some holes in the pavement. You look out for them, you know. It's like I realized if I fell into a hole in the pavement, I can't sue anyone because they're going in this country because they're going to go, why didn't you fucking look? You know, watch out. You see, in London that would be a huge, you know, a national media event, you know, because you slipped over in the supermarket, and how could that happen, and who's to blame, and who's going to jail, and how much? You have to fucking watch out. You know, we're given eyes and we're given legs, and we have the equipment to do this. So it's unbelievable. I've been sitting here in a restaurant smoking and drinking and just going, what a great country. This is I always want to go and plead asylum. Just go to the government and say, please just protect me from my people.
Nope. I have a question. Are you working on something new right now?
I am, yeah, I'm finishing a novel. Not today.
Okay. When is the moment when you think, okay, I think I have the novel, or do you edit after you finish a lot?
It takes a while. It's a climb. You start with a first draft. I try and do a first draft quickly, which can be crap. It's quite often crap. And then you go back and you get an idea of because you don't really know what you're trying to say either. And I think David Lynch said ideas is like fish in the ocean. It's like you start the book thinking it's about this, and you put that fish out there, but then a bigger idea comes and eats it, and you go, oh wait, it's actually about this, and so you write it again, and then you go, no wait, it's about this, and it grows and grows across 3 or 4 drafts, you know. And then you edit and clean it for just language and rhythm.
Okay.
I know it's finished. You can tell when a book is finished. If any of you are going to write a book, it's very easy. Skim it. Just read it from the beginning, very lightly. Read it through for the rhythm. And every time you stop on a word that disrupts you, every time something you don't like, take it out. Keep going. Keep going. And finally, when you can read the book through and you only catch on the same 2 or 3 things, it's like on one page you've put however, and every time you go there you go, oh, that's not correct. And you change it to nevertheless. And the next time you read it, you go, oh, that's not correct. And you put it back to however. As soon as you only have those left, then the book is finished.
Well, I have heard some writers telling that when they're working on something, they don't read anything else because they just don't want to get influenced by others or something. Do you read anything, or are you afraid also not to get influenced by others' work?
It's a good idea. I have been afraid of reading while writing because I am very impressionable. But I also still like reading. So what I do is I read something extremely different. So if I'm writing a contemporary work, then I'll read something from the 17th century, which can't possibly infect it, although it may still. But it's a valid idea, yeah, not to read something because you imprint the ideas. I'm a very slow reader anyway. I only read 3 or 4 pages a day. So it wouldn't translate the same way.
And can I ask you one more? Which book would you write if you could by others? Like, which was the book that you read and thought, like, I could write that better?
Like one I could write better?
Yes.
Write better?
Yeah.
Do you know what? This is horribly conceited in a way, but take it in the right spirit. I was always sad that Catcher in the Rye didn't have a resolution at the end. And I know books don't need to have resolutions and artworks don't need to explain themselves, but I was disappointed. I remember because I read that as a kid, I think myself. We must have done it at school or something, and I was just disappointed that it just kind of ended with nothing happening, and I wanted to know more. So I would probably throw an ending on it. Yeah, seeing as we were just talking about this being compared to Catcher in the Rye.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Would you write any scripts for the plays generally? Maybe in the future?
Would I?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I would try. Yeah, I haven't done it. That's very different, but I suspect I would like it because it's all dialogue. And so it would be much quicker. Once you take the settings, Once you don't have to do settings and you could just write pages of dialogue, then that would be interesting and fun. I'd like to try it one day. But having said that, I think it's a very specialist craft as well, and it's not to say that I would be able to do it, but I would like to try.
I'm sorry. Will we ever see Vernon Got Little, a movie?
I don't know. They've been trying. The rights were taken even before the book was published. The film rights were taken, and so far it's on its third producer, or actually fourth producer. But you know, it has proven obviously difficult for them. I have nothing to do with it, so who knows? But they're trying. Someone is always trying to make the movie, and so far they haven't done it. So we'll see.
Are you in a way excited or maybe scared? Will you see the film?
I don't know. It would be interesting to see it. It was strange watching the play for that reason, actually, because obviously the live performance is quite a resonating experience, and it was strangely personal. You could watch a lot of it. You just watched like a show, and you forgot that you had anything to do with it. But then certain moments, you go, "Ouch! Wow!" You know, that's like that stirs a feeling in you, which must have been in the book. That you'd forgotten about, so it's quite weird. I don't know how the movie would be.
Nope. Okay, I'm gonna ask the next question.
Go on.
Can you tell us a story? This might sound familiar. Can you tell us the story about the weirdest encounter you've ever had on your book tour? And I'm trying to make you to tell the story about Dr. No that you told 2 days earlier.
Really?
Yep. Yeah. They don't know about it.
Okay. It's probably not the weirdest thing that's happened.
Wow.
No, some weird things happen, but okay. Well, that was a launch party. This is a very interesting exercise in humility, where at the launch, a book launch in Amsterdam, I have a really great Dutch publisher, and he's very well connected with all sorts of important people. And it happened that he told me, he said, we've got this great banquet planned for your launch. And this incredibly important guy who, I don't know, still today I don't know who it is, but some amazing, like secret, incredible guy who is incredibly powerful and wealthy. He says, loaned us his play. We're using part of his property to have this banquet. And it's like almost an underground cavern, like a tunnel, but huge, long. And they had set up a table down the length of it for all of these guests, and they had all the dignitaries of Amsterdam were there. There were ambassadors and artists and television people, and this really bright table laden with wine and food. And it became clear when you went into the whole property, the place was immense. It was like a secret, like you go through a door and it was like a whole city block inside. Had its own, seemed to have its own park and had a church and it was just like some incredible other world back there. And so you're spending the dinner wondering who the host is. And everyone is kind of, whispering between themselves about who the guy is that loaned this place. And over the course of the night, he turned into this mythical figure who was at least must be like Dr. No. or some James Bond mega villain, you know. You just imagine he would come out with the, you know, black things and, you know, and have a little manservant like this called Tattoo or something. Some little guy like that. Anyway, during all this mythical proportion, of course, and it was for my book launch, so I was very, very honored. And I thought, it's an incredible honor. And everyone was, anyway, we're eating and drinking around the table. I went to say hello to some people and went down to the very end of the table. And looking all the way up the table to the entrance, after a while, an older gentleman came in a suit, and the whole table, everyone at the table went, that's him, that's the guy. And I looked, I was the only person standing because I was chatting there with someone, and I looked and the guy came in and looked down the table, and right next to him was a table like this one with a copy of my book on it. And I saw him down the distance of the table pick up the book and study it. And he looked at it even sideways, and he really studied the 3 dimensions of it. And then he peered down the table and saw me standing and went, come here. And everyone at the table looked at me like, oh wow, he's calling for you. Incredible, you know. And so I went up there thinking, I'm going to sign the book for Dr. No. I mean, it's an amazing honor, you know. So my chest grew big, and I went all the way down the table, and he turned to me, gave me the book, and then he took the little table there and said, you see this? He said, that's the perfect width. Could you get it under the leg for me? Because I can't bend so well anymore. It was my moment with Dr. No.
Thank you for sharing that. Your books, as you in person, are hugely entertaining and very funny. Who are the writers who make you laugh?
Who makes me laugh? I don't know. Comics make me laugh, actually.
Stand-up comics?
No, like comic books.
Oh, okay.
Very funny books. Obviously, John Kennedy Toole, Confederacy of Dunces, was fantastically funny in English. Actually, a lot of non-fiction makes me laugh. Because it's good non-fiction about humanity. There's a great old book, a 19th century book called Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. And it's written by a Scotsman called Mackay in the 19th century. And it is simply a catalogue of all the stupidest things humans have done. Such as there was an incredible tulip mania a few centuries ago, when for some reason Europe became obsessed with tulips, and single tulip bulbs were selling for the price of castles. Even they were just, people were winning and losing fortunes on single tulips. And there was, at the height of this, there was actually a man, I think an English nobleman in there, who traded his whole estate with a castle and everything for a single tulip bulb, because it was worth so much money. And when they put it on the ship to get it overhead to him in England, and a cabin boy on the ship ate it thinking it was an onion. And of course it was all bullshit. Of course, as soon as one person said, wait a minute, why are we making such a big deal about tulips? And then everyone went, actually, yeah. Why are we doing that? Boom, and the market collapsed. And suddenly everyone lost their fortune, and it ruined whole lifetimes for people. And it's just, I love that kind of thing, of the story of human madness.
You said many times that you like it here, and can we expect any funny Georgian character in your books, and how it will be like if Eva?
A funny Georgian character?
Yes.
I tell you, I would never pretend to just write a random Georgian character. I would have to understand some more about you. But what I could write is a foreigner who is here, looking at the other one. So in fact, maybe the foreigner's point of view is the funny thing, rather than the Georgian. I have to be careful to write foreign characters, at least until I've seen a little bit more. But I'm hoping by saying that, then they will invite me to come and stay, and I will look at it. It really is the very special things are happening here, which I think during this century will become obvious. I think you're coming into a very relevant period in history, because there's not much you haven't done in Georgia, and not much that hasn't been done to here. There's a wealth of experience and strength here, which is going to be needed. And the place is still incredibly strategically important. It really is like the gateway. It's very special. Your little Shangri-La here. Oh, your big Shangri-La, actually. It's fucking bigger than Britain, huh?
Idevin meskhora აქვს კითხვა?
სასმელებიდან ღვინოს, ვისკის თუ ლუც რა თქვა დავაგვიანებო. ჩვენ
ჯუსა ჩაჩა.
გამოსა. ჩვენი ღვინო თუ მოეწონა?
Whiskey.
Tequila.
Oh, okay. And did you like Georgian wine?
Yeah, I'm impressed with Georgian wine. But I'm also extremely sad because there are hundreds of types, and I'm only at the beginning of that journey. I've tried maybe 6 different wines, and they're all quite different, all extremely good and very drinkable. But it's the beginning of a much, much bigger journey. I wish I was already at like 50, and I could begin to know the regions and the grape varieties. But something very special, really special, and very drinkable. And there's this spirit. You can actually there's something friendly and strong, but it's like your language visually and the sound of your language. The nature, the hospitality and the practicality of the people. It sounds like bullshit, but the wines are that way as well. I haven't been disappointed anyway by a wine. And that's not to say that I'm just drinking incredible wines, because I've had just like the cheapest thing on the street as well. And it's been very friendly and yet with character.
იმის გამო რომ ბატონმა ბრძანა რომ წიგნის გამოქვეყნების შემდეგ თითქოს მას აღარ ეკუთვნის, ცოტათი შეიძლება აღარ არის მართებული ჩემი შეკითხვა, მაგრამ ალბათ მოისმინა როგორ ჟღერს ქართულ ენაზე მისი ტექსტი. და მინდოდა მეკითხა, ეს ხო სრულიად განსხვავებული ენა, არანაირი კავშირი არ აქვს. დამოკიდებულება გადათარგმნილი ტექსტის მიმართ, დაახლოებით როგორია? ნეტა ეს რა უბედურებას ნიშნავს, თუ ეს რა უქნეს ჩემ ტექსტს, თუ ანახე რა ხდება, უბრალოდ მაინტერესებს თვითონ რა შეგრძნება, როდესაც სრულიად უცხო ენაზე კითხულობ საკუთარ ტექსტს. მადლობთ.
Yeah, no, there is a way to tell. I was telling a translation story here in the car, actually. I don't mention the country or anything, but I found you can tell, even without reading the language. You can discover which one is well translated, and it's because certain people, when you arrive, come to you and go, oh, I loved it when this happened to him, and I got the feeling. And then today, someone here was quoting a line from the book back to me, and you just know, you can tell if someone got it, whether or not the thing is precise or whether it's literal, but you can always tell if a place got it, because there'll be one or two people will say, oh, this was my favorite time, and by the way they tell it back to you, you go, exactly, they got that. And you think, okay, if they got that, then they got the rest of it. But I was telling a story about one country translated it, and this man who was a professor of English at a university in that country, but had obviously never been outside to an English-speaking place. But he was a lovely, sweet guy, and he wrote to me, he emailed me every day for a year, asking questions about the translation, every day. And he would start the letter with, "Dear Pierre, already you must feel to kill me because of so many stupid, boring questions, but I just want to ask." And I'm like, "No, it's fine." And I corresponded with him for a year, arduously. And finally he said, "Okay, translation is finished, going to publish, thank you." He said, "Only one small question, just from me personally, is it why Vernon's father never comes home?" And I wrote back and said, "Fucking the father is dead." And he just sent me a very simple email. The last email I ever got for him just said, "Oh shit." But you get the other thing too is that you obviously in around the edges of events. I mean, amongst us are publishers and translators and other writers, and there is always a buzz, and you do get a sense of. I could tell you the places where the translation worked and where it didn't, because other writers will come and say, or yeah, and other publishers and stuff will talk to you about it. But the best thing is when somebody comes and says, "Oh, I liked it when that happened," and you realize that, okay, they got it, That's cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madloba.